Welcome to the Smoke and Spice Space, where we are all about flavor, and today is extra smoking. Today we are cooking up pork ribs. Now I'm going to walk you through all of the ways to build in flavors, whether that's from preparing the pork ribs, using a beautiful rub, adding smoke to your barbecue, then of course talking you through the cooking process, because that's where it can easily go wrong with pork ribs. Let's get spicy. We are going to set up the kettle with the snake method. Now, if you haven't tried this method before, it is fantastic to have under your belt, and it's a great way to get started in low and slow cooking, especially on your Weber kettle. This is a way that I learned how to low and slow cook, and it is easy to set up. Let's get into it. So the goal of the snake method is to create a chain of briquettes running around the outside of the charcoal grate. What this does is, if you light one end of that chain, it'll slowly burn through, keeping a nice low temperature for a long period of time. Using our briquettes, all that you need to do is stack up a row of 2 briquettes, just like dominoes laying on top of each other. Then you can light a small pile of briquettes to one side or use a chimney starter. You only need to add wood chunks at the start of the chain, approximately about a third of the way through. If you go any longer than this, the pork is simply not going to absorb any more smoke and you're just wasting those wood chunks. Now we're just going to wait until our small pile of briquettes is fully lit, and then we'll move them to the start of the chain. Then we can add in a drip pan and a cooking grill and leave the barbecue to preheat. Here we have our pork ribs. Now I'm just going to walk you through how I like to prepare them. First off, these are baby back ribs. You can tell by the loin meat at the top here. So these are actually really great because they're not too overly meaty. If you have super thick ribs with a lot of loin meat, it can easily dry out, making your pork ribs not very nice to eat. So best to trim that loin meat down if there's too much of it. When you're about to bite into a delicious pork rib, the last thing you want is a tough piece of membrane on the back of that rib. So I'm going to show you a really quick way to easily remove that membrane. So first, what we want to do is dry down the pork ribs. We need to get a really firm grip on these. Then we can get our butter knife in and just kind of lever off a bit of membrane. May take a little bit to get into this point. And then just using your butter knife, keep lifting that membrane. And this is where it's important to use a dull knife so you don't pierce through. Then you can use your paper towel to rip that off. It's okay if it breaks, just keep going until all that membrane is removed. Now that we've removed the membrane, I'm just going to trim and tidy up the edges of the ribs. So we can remove this scraggly little bit. What we want to create is a really nice even shaped piece of meat. Because it's cooking for a long period of time, you don't want some parts overcooking and drying out before other parts are ready. So we can just trim it off and create a beautiful shape. You could trim away this part of fat here, but I'm going to leave it because I really love that fatty, juicy part that melts down. Our ribs are all prepped and it's time to layer up the flavor, baby. And I've got the rub for the job, our all new Weber pork rub. So we designed this pork rub along the lines of a classic pork rub, but have taken it to the next level. In here, we have smoked ingredients. We've got garlic, onion, and chili. So you're getting that extra depth of flavor, and you can actually smell those smoked ingredients. They're so incredible. Of course, this has a beautiful red hue already with some paprika. There's also a touch of sugar in there for that caramelization. But most importantly, it's how it's all designed with all those layers and depths of flavor. It's going to leave all those single one-dimensional pork rubs for dust, literally. The beauty about low and slow cooking is it's a journey of your own. You can absolutely use a binder on your pork ribs if you like, so you can apply some mustard or a bit of oil and then you rub on, but today we are just putting the rub straight onto the meat. It's nice and moist enough, it's going to perfectly stick. On the bottles, I've included quantities so you get that right amount the first time. In the lid, you've got a spoon option or the shaker option too, which is perfect for this job. Because I've used this a lot, I'm just going straight on and shaking that all over. Get a really nice even application. I have a challenge for you barbecue comp teams out there. I believe this is a winning rub. So if you win a competition with this rub, shout out to me, we'll arrange a little something something. When you're sprinkling that rub on, just make sure you have a nice light even layer. There's no point going too gung-ho because the ribs will be too spicy and you'll take away from that pork flavor. The kettle is all set up, it's time to get it on. You may notice that we added a water pan into the barbecue. This will help regulate the temperature inside the barbecue. As you're lifting the lid on and off, it'll hold that heat in there so the heat will recover quicker, but also it will add extra moisture into the air. So we've just placed our pork ribs over the top of that water pan. Now the most important part throughout this whole cook is making sure that meat does not sit over the top of the fire, so you may need to rotate the cooking grill around as that fire burns through. When you're low and slow cooking on your kettle, it's important to maintain the temperature of your barbecue in that low and slow range, so between 100 and 135 degrees. So to do this on a Master Touch or Master Touch Plus, you can easily move your bottom vent to that smoke position. Or if you're using a traditional kettle, I like to control that air temperature by using the top vent. So if you would like the heat to come up, put your air vent right over the top of the fire, wide open, or if you'd like to bring that temperature down, swing the air vent around to the other side, and then from there you can adjust, slightly closing those air vents. We're about an hour into the cook and it's a good time to start spritzing the meat. This will help introduce extra moisture and prevent your pork ribs from drying out, which can happen so easily. It's also a good time to check on the barbecue temperature. Let's have a sneak peek. Oh, these look beautiful. The color is starting to develop and now we can spray our ribs. So it's great to spray in the areas that look like they're cooking a little bit quicker or starting to dry out. I really like to use apple cider vinegar as my spritz. It doesn't interrupt with the flavors that you're already looking for. You can use whatever liquids you like, even water will do the job. Because we're all about layering the flavors, we're adding wood chunks. Today I'm using hickory because it pairs so nicely with pork. What you want is a nice, slow, steady stream of smoke. Aim for that blue smoke because that is the best. Now we're at the 3-hour mark and I'm going to check on the ribs. What I'm looking for is that a really nice color has developed, that rub has set and the bark has formed. From here, what I'm going to do is wrap them, and this will ensure that moisture is kept inside the meat while it still keeps cooking. During the wrapping process, I like to add a little bit of liquid in with the parcel. So I'm going in with some apple cider vinegar and maple syrup. I know a lot of people add butter or brown sugar or even honey, but I find those flavors detract from the original flavor you're aiming for. Okay, so I've just laid out a few sheets of foil here. I don't have the strongest foil today, so I have double layered it to make sure that we don't pierce through that foil. Now we can go on with our ribs. Take one wrapper. So you can see it doesn't have any flecks at the moment. That's because it hasn't softened and cooked the whole way through yet. So I'll just lay that down. Then on we can go with some apple cider vinegar. Just about a tablespoon, you just want a little extra moisture in there. And a wiggle of maple syrup over the top. Now for this part, I like to wrap them nice and tight. Now I leave them bone side up so that moisture is closest to the meat underneath, so that really starts to soften there. So we want to create a nice airtight seal. So for this part, I'll pop these on the barbecue, again, bone side up, just to let them cook for about an hour or just until we can pierce a toothpick through the meat so it's nice and tender. Don't leave them for too long at this stage, otherwise they will easily overcook. So I've decided that this would be a great opportunity to show you the difference that wrapping makes. So I have left one rack completely unwrapped, and then we'll compare the difference at the end. Our ribs have been wrapped for just over an hour, so now we're going to check for tenderness. Yep, that slides in easily, so these are ready to come out of the foil. We can place the ribs directly on the cooking grill, and now we're going to save those juices. We'll reserve them for another use. Now we're just going to let our ribs cook for another half an hour just to set that bark, the outside crust. If you're wanting to sauce your ribs, now's the perfect time to do so. While we're here, we might add a cheeky little bit of our drippings to the top of our wrapped ribs. Have a look at the difference between the two sets of ribs. The unwrapped ones are looking quite dry, whereas the ones that we have wrapped are looking still nice and meaty and juicy. Have a look at these. Just after that half an hour of allowing that bark to set, that signature red hue of our pork rub has come through. Now we're just going to take these off the barbecue, wrap them in foil and leave them to rest for half an hour before we slice into them. I know it's really hard, but it's so important to do this. All right, we've given them the resting time they need. It's time to check them out. This first set is our unwrapped ribs. So you can see that they're quite dry on top. The rub hasn't quite fully absorbed there, but let's slice in anyways. I find the easiest way to slice into pork ribs is if you flip them over so the rib side is up. That way you've got a guide exactly where to slice. Not bad, but I think we can do better. Let's check out the ones that we had wrapped. As you can see, the rub has fully absorbed into the pork. We have a really nice exterior and I can already feel they're more tender. Let's slice in. Oh, I can hear that juice squelching underneath. It sounds amazing and they smell so good. See that beautiful smoke ring the whole way around the pork rib. You can see this edge is quite dry here and underneath as well. It's a lot more juicier. I know that both of these are going to have great flavour, but that extra effort of wrapping them is going to be worth it. I know what my pick is. I'm not waiting any longer. I'm digging in. Beautiful.